The term rare car usually inspires images of outrageously styled exotic supercars with unfathomable performance and incredible engineering underneath the body panels. Those aren't the cars we'll be looking at today. Hey, I'm Creech, this is Creech & Cars, and today I'll be going over 13 incredibly rare cars that you wouldn't bat an eye at if you saw them on the road. Starting off the list, we have the Lincoln Mark LT. About 35,000 of these were sold between 2005 and 2009, which is far more than the rest of the vehicles on this list, but I decided to put it on the list because these are pretty hard to notice and aren't common at all, considering the Mark LT is based off of the most popular vehicle in America, the F-150. As is apparent from the pictures, the Lincoln Mark LT was nothing more than a rebadged F-150 with a nicer interior. And when I say rebadged, I mean the badge is literally the only thing Ford changed on the truck. All of the body panels are identical, and from a distance it's pretty much impossible to tell you're looking at a Lincoln and not an F-150 Lariat or Limited. These days Ford sells tons of luxury pickup trucks, but they're still just called F-150, which is why the Lincoln Mark LT gets a spot on this list. If you're interested in a luxury truck and want something a little different, you can pick up a used Mark LT for about 15 grand. Next up, we have the Cadillac CTS-V wagon. Only 1,767 of these were built, and less than 600 of those are optioned for the manual transmission. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of wagons, but I do have to admit the CTS-V looks really good and it has the performance to match. The 556 horsepower 6.2 liter V8 is able to move the almost 4,400 pound curb weight from 0 to 60 in just 3.9 seconds. The interior is also downright luxurious. Every surface you touch is either leather or Alcantara. If you want to get your hands on a CTS-V wagon today, you'd have to shell out about 60 grand to get a used one in average condition. Next on the list is the Chrysler Crossfire SRT6 Roadster. You'll probably notice a Chrysler Crossfire coupe when you pull up behind one and see the infamous rear end design. But if you're lucky enough to see the better looking Roadster version, check to see if it's an SRT, as only around 1,500 Crossfire SRT6 Roadsters were sold in America. These models came with a 3.2 liter V6 that pumps out 330 horsepower and 310 pound-feet of torque and is mated to a 5-speed transmission. Aside from the boost in power, the SRT6 also came with a large fixed wing and 16 spoke wheels. If you like the look and performance of the SRT6 Roadster, you can get a used one now for around $20,000 to $25,000. At number 10 on the list, we have the BMW 1M Coupe. This model was only available for the 2011 model year, and as a result, there are only about 1,000 of them out in the wild. The 1M was a pure sports car. The tiny but muscular body hides a twin-turbocharged engine that puts out 335 horsepower and can do the quarter mile in 13 seconds flat. The 1M did catch some slack for not being different enough in appearance and especially performance from the 135i, so you likely would notice the M version of the 1 Series at first glance. To get the pure enthusiast experience from this ultimate driving machine, you have to spend around $60,000 to $80,000 to get one on the used market. Coming in at number 9 is the Pontiac Solstice GXP Coupe. GXP was the performance trim offered on Pontiacs, and GXP coupe versions of this GM Roadster are super rare nowadays, as GM only sold about 800 of them. The Solstice GXP coupe is more of a hardcore performance option when opposed to the base weekend Roadster Solstice. It uses a typical GM Ecotec 4-cylinder, but the GXP uses a turbocharger to up the output to 260 horsepower and give it a 0 to 60 time of 5.2 seconds. The GXP coupe was around $32,000 new, but these days it'll cost you upwards of $35,000 to $40,000 to get your hands on one. Many automotive enthusiasts are aware that GM used to be at the forefront of electric vehicle development, and in 1997 General Motors debuted the first electric truck in the world, the Chevy S10 EV. Unlike the bolder and more futuristic design of today's Silverado EV, the S10 EV looked just like an S10. It only came in white and has a single cab, but that won't narrow things down much, and the only way to tell if an S10 is electric without getting under the hood is a subtle electric badge on the bottom of the door panels. GM only built 492 S10 EVs, and only 60 of them were sold to the public. The only sale of one I could find recently was in 2012, where someone paid $4,000 for an S10 EV that wasn't even running. At number 7 on the list, we have the Saab 94X. Only 814 of these were built, and about 450 were sold to the public. The rise and fall of Saab deserves a very long video of its own, but in 2011, under the ownership of General Motors and Spyker, Saab began production on a mid-sized luxury crossover called the 94X. Unfortunately, Saab couldn't make it through 2011 and filed for bankruptcy in December. As a result, the 94X is an incredibly rare crossover that was built on borrowed funds and borrowed time. Today, 94Xs trade hands for anywhere between $13,000 and $20,000 depending on condition. Next, at number 6, we have the Dodge Durango and Chrysler Aspen hybrid models. The hybrid version of this full-size SUV chassis only sold about 400 units, and that combined with its ordinary design make it very hard to notice that you're looking at something pretty rare. The hybrid option only gave you small badges on the front quarter panels and liftgate. The Chrysler Aspen in general is fairly rare, as it debuted in the recession as a full-size near luxury SUV and naturally didn't sell well. But for the 2009 model year, Chrysler also offered a hybrid powertrain for both models. The Durango hybrid started at just over $45,000 and the Aspen was about $200 more, but if you want one today, it'll cost you only about $6,000 to $7,000. The Mercedes R-Class is already pretty weird. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of the design, although it is a more unique look that can set you apart from other grocery getters. So if you see one, check to see if it's an AMG version. The R63 AMG only sold about 330 models, with 108 landing in the US, making it far rarer than just about any other AMG car. It was a 2.5-ton crossover with a 6.2-liter V8 that packed over 500 horsepower, and it's easy to see why demand wasn't super high. If this niche crossover fits your lifestyle, you can get one today for $20,000 to $50,000 depending on condition. At number 4 on the list, with about 200 examples produced, is the Oldsmobile Cutlass Calais 442 W41. The 442 W41 was a performance package for the final year of the Cutlass Calais. It offered a whopping 190 horsepower out of a 4-cylinder engine, but it was pretty fast, with 0 to 60 in 7 seconds and a top speed of 130 miles per hour. The low sales numbers for this car can be largely chalked up to price. The price was comparable to a V8 Mustang, which was just much more alluring to buyers than a small Oldsmobile. But if you want one nowadays, they can go for a few thousand, up to around 12 or 13,000. At number 3 on the list, we have the Buick LeSabre Grand National. The LeSabre Grand National often gets little recognition due to the popularity of the Regal Grand National. The LeSabre Grand National was only available for the 1985 model year, and Buick sold somewhere between 112 and 117 of them. The LeSabre was a fairly large front-wheel drive car, and the Grand National trim only gave new buyers 150 horsepower and a 4-speed automatic, so demand wasn't huge when the car was new. LeSabre Grand Nationals have been trading for around $15,000 to $20,000. One German automaker whose designs don't stand out is Volkswagen, which brings us to number 2 on this list, the Volkswagen Passat W8 wagon with the manual transmission. Only about 100 of these were sold, and it's easy to see why. There just isn't a huge demand for a bland car like the Passat to be equipped with a 4.0-liter W8 engine and 6-speed manual transmission. This version of the Passat does put out 270 horsepower and gets to 60 in about 6.5 seconds. This car costs over $40,000 new, but today you can get one for around $4,000 to $15,000. That is, if you're able to find one. And finally, at number 1 on the list, we have another Saab. Only 25 examples of the Saab 95 NG Sport Combi exist, as here in America, the car never made it to dealerships. The situation here is similar to the 94X, where this generation of the car was just beginning production when Saab went bankrupt. At least 35 were completely built, but 27 are believed to exist in factory form today, and 24 are roadworthy. Furthermore, only about 11 of them were made for the US market. The process of obtaining the paperwork to own and operate one of these is incredibly difficult, as it's essentially a pre-production prototype vehicle. However, if you want one of the rarest cars in the world, the 95 NG Sport Combi is a somewhat attainable way to get one. So there are 13 rare cars that you never notice. What do you think about this list? Do you think I left any cars off that deserve a spot? Let me know in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.